Sean McDonough is brought to you by Catches, New England's injury pros. Set up your free injury consultation at catcheslaw.com. And he joins us this morning on the Harbor One hotline. Hey, Sean.
Well, I have found my appropriate place. I am the warm-up act for Devin McCourty. That is just out. We've got the lineup right as it should be.
If you had to
Good
be,
morning. How is everybody in Greg Hill land today?
we're doing great. If you had to be the opener, not a bad act to open up for it.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That's awesome. The McCourtys are impressive people, to say the least. I'm sure that'll be a great regular feature right here on WEEI.
Well, I don't know if you've been listening, but we have been discussing this nonsense which is floating around about Bill Belichick being fired. Can you imagine at any point that happens?
Yes, I suppose I could, right? Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's imminent, but at some point, right?
See, Wiggy
that
says...
time comes for everybody. I would think if they come to that time, it wouldn't be termed a firing, that hopefully it would be labeled, it's by mutual agreement that, it's time to turn it over to somebody else. But I would hope he would go of his own volition, but who knows?
Well, let me ask you then about timing, because Wiggy says it'll never happen. It only happens when he decides to.
Tom Landry was never going to get fired, too, right? Now, of course, that was an ownership change and an entirely different thing, but
very different.
I can't see it happening, and Wiggy is more plugged in than I am, certainly when it comes to the Patriots, but
well, my only biggest
at a certain point, it's about winning, and the winning has tailed off a little bit here in recent years. Hopefully, they have a great year, and it's not even a conversation going forward. But that time comes for everybody, especially if you're not winning.
But see, my only thing is this: Robert already let the greatest quarterback of all time go, and it came back to be egg on his face. There's no way he makes that same mistake.
Well, I mean, would Bill go coach someplace else? What are you saying, that Bill would go somewhere else and coach and win and stuff in their face? I mean, I guess Tom Brady did it by winning a Super Bowl somewhere else. But I wouldn't think Bill would keep coaching in his 70s somewhere else. Maybe he would, but that would be surprising to me.
Sean, Saturday night, it was great to hear you back on college football. Big win for North Carolina. We've been talking, obviously, about Drake May. He looked spectacular. What did you make of him in person?
Yeah, we had their conference championship game last year against Clemson, so saw him in person then too. And Chris was when they were 9-1 last year, he was really on my Heisman ballot, on my radar in terms of when we vote for the Heisman, we vote 1, 2, and 3, and he was definitely under consideration for me being at least one of those three. And then he kind of tailed off a little bit. They kind of tailed off, but I think he's Andrew Luck kind of prospect. I mean, we do a lot of college football. You see a lot of guys who are hyped as first-round picks and potential pros, and some you see it and some you say, well, maybe, maybe not. Mac Jones was probably one of those maybe, maybe not guys. But this guy, to me, I don't want to say he's Peyton Manning or John Elway coming out of college, but he's pretty close. I mean, he has all of those things you'd want. He has the size and the leadership and the intelligence and arm strength, and he made a couple of poor decisions the other night that helped South Carolina get back in the game. So I think that's something that his coaches and pro people would want to see him tighten up. But I think when you're that talented, sometimes you think you can make plays that you probably can, but you shouldn't try, especially when they were ahead by 17 points. So I think he's great. I think he has a chance to be the number one pick in the draft. Maybe Caleb Williams would be there ahead of him. I think that's a decision probably a lot of NFL teams at the top of the draft would have to make, or the teams that are at the top of the draft. But, I think either one of them, you'd be happy if you had them on your team.
Sean, you're no opening act in my mind, because earlier in the show we were saying we can talk to you about anything, whether it's Red Sox, NFL, college football. So jumping to the Red Sox, last night's game, they put up a fight. At this point in the season, when they're 4.5 games still out of a wild card spot, how important is it to you when you look at this roster and see that they're still fighting their way through September?
Yeah, well, I think it's important, right? And I guess you shouldn't get too much credit for doing what you're supposed to do, right? They're paid a lot of money to go out there and compete and try to win every night. I do think they should continue to give it their all to try to make the playoffs as long as there's still a chance. Obviously, it's a slim chance being 4.5 out with 23 to go. But, I think until it's obvious that it's completely over, you need to try doing that, and then when it is over, maybe you play some of these other younger guys a little bit more down the stretch. But yeah, they played hard last night. It was frustrating loss, and it's just interesting. There's games when we definitely can't use this guy and that guy and this guy, and now there are games where Kenley Jansen's out there 3 days in a row. So, I think that's something to ponder. But they're doing what they should do. Keep trying as long as there's still a chance. I mean, keep trying every night. But when the thing is obviously over, then it's time to maybe see more of some of these other guys.
Well, if it keeps going this way, I am fascinated by what does or does not happen at the end of the season. And in your mind, are both Chaim Bloom and Alex Cora both here next season?
Well, it's interesting, and I agree with you. I think it'll be fascinating to see, especially if it just kind of ends like this, right? Was this good enough? Was this enough progress? And I think if you're Chaim Bloom and trying to make the case to stay, you talk about developing players. Well, look at what Tristan Casas did. Look what Bayo did. Obviously Duran had a turnaround year. Rafael is here. So, and their farm system does get pretty high grades now from people who are independent and evaluating those things. So I think that's the case. It doesn't always seem like they get along. I wonder if they could coexist. I assume that they could, but I don't know, as much about that as obviously people who are inside the building do. So it's interesting. I would say if I had to guess, would they both be back next year? Probably not. Would one or the other be back? I'd say that's likelier. I doubt they would just completely wipe out both of them at the same time, but that's the decision. Do you really believe that this is going in the right direction? And if you do, I guess you stay the course.
Sean, you talked about you had the opportunity because clearly you vote for the Heisman to see Drake May, see Caleb Williams. I ultimately think I'm calling it a quiet crap for Caleb. And if you were
Would it be fake for Drake?
I mean, whatever you want, we can find something for Drake. But if you were ever in the position where you're the New England Patriots, and let's say you only win 6 games, 7 games, and had the position to get up into the top 3 to get one of those 2 guys, is that a move that you would make and say, okay, it is time for us to move on from Mac because of what these guys potentially could do?
Yes. Yeah, 100% yes. And I mean, I think it's a huge year for Mac, right? I mean, This is the year he proves, okay, he's the kind of guy you can win at the highest level with, or he proves that he's not, really. I think, last year was a little unfair. Obviously, the coaching situation was not great, to say the least. Now they have a real professional offensive coordinator, does a terrific job in Bill O'Brien. So I don't think, that's an excuse for Mac anymore. They're going to play a representative, professional, NFL offense, and with somebody who he's very comfortable playing for, obviously, with the connection back to Alabama. So, yes, I think, as you know, Wiggy, we all know, it's very rare you can win at the highest level, win a Super Bowl without a great quarterback. I mean, we've seen what happened here when we went from great quarterback play to okay quarterback play. And we saw what happened in Tampa Bay when they went from okay quarterback play to great quarterback play. So you have to have that guy. You really do. I mean, you can occasionally throw in the Trent Dilfers of the world and win a Super Bowl, but that's obviously the exception rather than the rule. So if they come to the conclusion he's not that kind of guy, then yes, I think you do what you can to get one of those, whether it's at the top of the draft or from somewhere else.
Speaking of that great quarterback, he will be back and will be honored on Sunday at halftime. Do you have a favorite moment? There's a lot of them, but do you have a favorite Tom Brady moment?
Yeah, it would be off the field, I guess. We were together on a golf trip, and his dad had a Super Bowl ring, and it's a long story, but basically the first Super Bowl that they won, Tom had his Super Bowl ring sized for his dad, and at the ring ceremony, he gave it to his dad. I believe it was the Kraft's house. And his dad was like, "What's this?" He said, "Well, that's for you. Thanks to you, I've been able to achieve things like this, and you've been an important part of every moment of my life." So, I think, Tom did that, never knowing if he was ever going to play in another Super Bowl again. Never mind win one.
Yeah.
So, I think he's a really special guy on and off the field. It's been a pleasure to get to know him and his family. His dad, I played golf with his dad a few times, and his dad is one of the nicest people I've ever met. I just appreciate. It's very hard, as you know, Greg, because you're a celebrity of that magnitude, to be a celebrity of that magnitude and
Yes.
handle it as gracefully as he does. And I just admire. I think he's the greatest football player of all time. I remember talking to John Harbaugh a few years ago, and that's he said that, and he's part of the enemy, but he said he's not the greatest quarterback of all time. He's the greatest football player of all time, and I really believe that. So I think it's going to be a really special day down there this weekend. I'm glad he's getting what he deserves, and I'm sure the reaction will be tremendous.
Sean, when it comes to Alex Verdugo, Cora said that he could be making a return tonight. We've seen so much from him, whether it's Cora scratching him or making sure to cover him and Heim Bloom on the field after the Astros series, having a 40-minute conversation. Now he's injured. What do you see the future is for Alex Verdugo here?
That's another really good question. I don't know. I think it's hard, right? Because he definitely made strides as a player. I used to kind of think he was pretty much average at everything, right? He hit for average power. He was an average defender. His average was pretty much average. But, he's improved. He's been a really good right fielder this year. He's been a good hitter, really good hitter for a lot of the year. And, I think he's a good player. He's probably a better than good player. But there's obviously other stuff, and we don't know all of it, right? And they know that, or they should have known that when they traded for him. I remember when they traded for him, there were a bunch of articles about, but this is a talented guy, but he's, had some stuff that he's had to deal with. So, I just think they need to decide, do they want to continue if there is that sort of thing, if he's late or what, I don't know all the details. But do you want to keep dealing with that? Because, he's probably increased his trade value. But, other teams know that stuff too. So he's probably increased it as a player, but, does the fact that other teams will know that perhaps, they're not enamored of some of the other stuff and they want to move him along, that would probably diminish his trade value. But I do think that's one of the big questions of the offseason.
Well, there's a lot of them, and we'll keep talking to you about those, and it's always a pleasure, and we will talk to you next week, Sean.
Well, my pleasure. And I like now that I get cut off, right? We have to be on time because there's no way we're bleeding into Mr. McCourty's time. So.
Well, I mean,
that's for sure.
Should it be necessary, we would bump Devin McCourty for you. I mean,
No. It's the other way around. Ken Laird already talked to me about it. He said, hey, I happily yield the stage to one of the great Patriots. So,
by the way,
I'm happy to be the warm-up. This is a very comfortable place to be, and I'm going to stay tuned because I want to hear what Mr. McCourty has to say.
Sean's told me privately that
he's going to be dynamic in the media world. He's just a rock star if he isn't one already.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Sean told me privately that he's very intimidated by Ken Laird. So look out for that.
Very intimidated. Whatever he says goes. That's it.
Wait do you find out what Laird is paying McCourty? You'll want to.
Oh yeah, well that'd be good information to have. I gotta get my friends at Catches Law to negotiate me a new deal.
Got to start coming in studio like Ty.
Yeah, I was there last week.
That is true.
I'm sure it drove the ratings way up.
Yes,
especially on Nesson.
Yes, it did. All right, Sean. Thank you, bud. We'll talk to you soon.
Have a great day. Talk to you next week.
All right, there's Sean McDonough.